There is something sitting in your freezer right now that food companies have spent decades making sure you never actually look at. Not the flavor, not the price. The two words printed in smaller font directly beside the flavor name on the front of the container. Two words that legally allow a manufacturer to remove the cream, replace it with vegetable oil, palm oil, and a network of chemical gums, pump the whole thing full of air to inflate the volume, and still sell it to you in a package designed to look exactly like the ice cream your grandmother made in her kitchen. We pulled products directly from grocery store freezers across the country, traced every ownership chain, reviewed independent laboratory testing, and went through every FDA and USDA regulatory filing we could locate. 9 ice cream brands that are not giving you what the label promises. 8 that genuinely are. By the end of this, you will know exactly which ones to put back, and exactly which ones are worth every dollar. One number before we start. The USDA requires a minimum of 10% milk fat for a product to legally carry the name ice cream on its label. Everything on the avoid list either fails that standard, manipulates around it, or has a safety and ingredient record that makes the formula the least of your concerns. 10%. Keep that number in front of you. It is the single most important fact in this entire investigation, and the brands on this list spent millions of dollars making sure you never thought to ask about it. We start with lower concern and build toward the brands that genuinely shocked us. Then we flip it and give you the 8 that made a completely different choice. Number 9. Great Value Ice Cream. This is the one that fills carts because the math makes sense. Under $3 for 48 ounces. A family trying to stretch the grocery bill reaches for this without a second thought, and the reasoning behind that decision is completely sound. Affordable protein, accessible treat, familiar brand. The problem is what sits behind the Walmart name when you actually start reading. Walmart does not own a single dairy farm. Walmart does not employ anyone standing at a processing facility verifying what goes into a carton before it is sealed. Walmart has supply contracts. Those contracts go to whoever can deliver product at the lowest possible cost per unit while meeting the minimum legal threshold required to put a frozen dessert on an American grocery shelf. That threshold is extraordinarily permissive. No named dairy source required. No independent fat content verification. No disclosure beyond what the FDA already mandates across the entire category. And here is the part that changes everything about how you look at that carton. The manufacturer producing Great Value ice cream this quarter may not be the same manufacturer producing it next quarter. The contract rotates on price. When it rotates, the facility changes, the sourcing changes, and the quality standards of whoever won the latest bid become the effective standards of the carton you are currently holding. The label stays identical. Everything behind it can shift with zero visible signal to the person buying it. Open a Great Value carton and take a spoonful slowly. Within seconds you feel a gritty, icy scrape across the tongue. That texture is not a freezer storage problem. That is what happens when milk fat is too low to generate smooth, stable structure. The product barely clears the legal minimum for ice cream classification, budget price, anonymous sourcing, and a supply chain that changes hands without ever telling you. Number 8. Breyers. This is the one that built its entire identity on 2 words, all natural. Breyers spent decades earning exactly the kind of trust that takes generations to build. Then Unilever acquired the brand and reformulated it, reducing milk fat below the legal threshold for ice cream and replacing the cream with Terra gum, carob bean gum, and a layered cocktail of synthetic stabilizers. Most Breyers products are now classified as frozen dairy desserts. The branding did not change. The fonts stayed, the logo stayed, the colors stayed, only the product inside changed. Quietly, without a press release, without an announcement, without any signal visible enough to interrupt the automatic reach that brand loyalty produces. Scoop it and you feel something oddly elastic, slightly bouncy. That is the gum network doing the structural work that cream used to do naturally. Then came the lawsuit. Breyers was taken to federal court for falsely claiming their products contained real vanilla. Unilever settled and paid $8.4 million in damages. That is not a mislabeling accident. That is a deliberate misrepresentation sustained long enough to generate 8 figures in legal liability. A brand that earned your trust over generations used that trust to sell you a reformulated product under the same packaging, while fighting a federal lawsuit over false ingredient claims. All natural. That was always the promise. The lab results and the settlement documents tell you what that promise was actually worth. Number 7. Dreyer's. Also sold as Eddie's depending on which side of the country you are standing in. Dreyer's co-created Rocky Road in 1929. They have been making ice cream since the 20s, and for most of that history the reputation held. Then Nestlé took ownership, and the decline that followed was documented in two separate lawsuits. The first established that their vanilla ice cream did not contain actual vanilla bean in any meaningful quantity. Customers had already noticed. The flavor had flattened, the richness was gone, and the product tasted increasingly artificial before anyone filed anything in court. The lawsuit simply confirmed what the sensory experience had already been signaling. The second lawsuit revealed something worse. The chocolate coating on their dipped novelty bars was not chocolate. It was a vegetable oil and coconut oil blend with artificial vanilla flavoring pressed into a shape designed to look like chocolate. You paid for chocolate and received a vegetable oil coating engineered to approximate it. Their slow-churned line carries a specific promise built into the name itself. Less fat, fewer calories. What they do not put on the front label is the compensation mechanism. To recover the taste and texture that fat was supposed to provide, Dreyer's added roughly 25% more sugar. You traded fat for sugar and received a nutritionally worse product in return. Like Breyers, most of the Dreyer's lineup has since been reclassified as frozen dairy dessert. The ice cream name is gone. The ice cream pricing largely remains. Number 6. Good Humor. Good humor is summer nostalgia compressed into a wrapper. The jingle, the truck, the strawberry shortcake bar that generations of American children associated with a specific kind of uncomplicated happiness. That emotional history is doing a tremendous amount of work on your behalf. And Good Humor has been counting on exactly that for decades. Look past the nostalgia and read what is actually in the strawberry shortcake bar. The base uses non-fat milk instead of cream, padded out with corn syrup, palm oil, soybean oil, coconut oil, multiple stabilizing gums, and artificial flavors. The chocolate-looking coating contains no real chocolate. It is coconut oil with an artificial vanilla substitute pressed into a shape that implies something it does not contain. But here is the detail that changes the entire conversation around this product. The strawberry shortcake bar contains Red 3, a synthetic food dye that the FDA has formally acknowledged causes cancer in laboratory animals. As of this investigation, it remains inside the product. You are paying for a frozen dairy dessert built on non-fat milk and vegetable oil, coated in something designed to look like chocolate but containing none, carrying a synthetic dye with a documented carcinogenic profile in animals, sold under the packaging of childhood memory. The nostalgia is real. What is inside the wrapper has nothing to do with it. Number 5. Blue Bell. Blue Bell is a cultural institution across the American South in a way that very few food brands ever achieve. People defend it with genuine personal emotion. It is the kind of product that gets brought up in conversations about home, about family, about the specific feeling of a summer afternoon in a place you grew up. That emotional connection is exactly why 2015 landed the way it did. A listeria outbreak was traced directly back to Blue Bell production facilities. 10 people were hospitalized, 3 people died. The company issued the largest ice cream recall in American history. 8 million gallons pulled from shelves across the country. What came out during the federal investigation was worse than the scale of the recall. Evidence showed that senior leadership, including the CEO, had been aware of contamination concerns inside their facilities before the outbreak occurred and had not acted on them. This was a known internal problem that was not fixed. The CEO was criminally indicted. In 2020, the company paid nearly $20 million in settlements and fines. Then in 2025, Blue Bell was back in the news. Half-gallon tubs of one flavor were found to contain a completely different flavor inside. A flavor that contains tree nuts. An undisclosed allergen sitting inside a carton labeled as something else entirely. No reported injuries this time. But a company that paid $20 million to resolve a contamination scandal involving 3 deaths does not receive the benefit of the doubt on a second allergen mislabeling event. The brand name survived. What happened inside those facilities did not disappear because the legal process concluded. Number 4. Turkey Hill. Turkey Hill was the brand that parents trusted specifically because it did not feel like it required scrutiny. Premium ingredients stated plainly on the label. Natural flavors. Honest marketing. A dairy name that implied the product came from somewhere real and carefully managed. That trust was specific and it was earned. Then 2016 happened. Turkey Hill recalled tubs labeled as Dutch chocolate ice cream that had been filled with Rocky Road instead. Rocky Road contains almonds. Rocky Road contains eggs. For any customer managing a nut allergy or an egg allergy, that is not a labeling inconvenience. That is a medical emergency that could have killed someone. In 2022, tubs of chocolate marshmallow ice cream were found to contain peanut butter-flavored ice cream, another undisclosed allergen in a container that gave no indication of its presence. During this same period, Turkey Hill quietly removed the words ice cream from their packaging, replacing the phrase premium ice cream with the phrase premium quality in the same font, on the same label design, with no public announcement and no explanation. Repeated allergen mislabeling that places people with documented food allergies in direct physical danger is not a processing accident. It is a quality control infrastructure that is not functioning, and it carries consequences that cannot be corrected after the fact. Number 3. Klondike. Klondike built its brand around one of the most effective advertising questions in frozen dessert history. What would you do for a Klondike bar? The implied answer was always something ridiculous, something extravagant, because the bar was worth it. Worth the cream, the chocolate, the premium experience. Klondike is now owned by Unilever, the same parent company as Breyers, and Klondike has followed the exact same playbook. Products have been gradually reclassified as frozen dairy desserts. The premium bar imagery stayed. The pricing largely stayed. The formula changed. Look at the Crunch Bar ingredient panel. Non-fat milk and coconut oil appear as primary ingredients, not cream. Corn syrup solids, fructose, terra gum, guar gum, and locust bean gum follow. 4 stabilizing gums in a single bar. Real cream holds its structure through dairy fat. Those gums exist specifically because the fat is insufficient to do that work on its own. Then in 2025, Klondike was pulled into a recall affecting nearly 18,000 containers flagged for hard plastic contamination, tied directly to Unilever's manufacturing network, the same network that produces Breyers under the all-natural label. A 6-pack of Klondike bars runs close to $5 at most major retailers. For that price, you deserve real ice cream, a clean ingredient label, and a manufacturer not issuing plastic contamination recalls. Klondike is not currently delivering any of those 3 things. Number 2. Halo Top. Halo Top arrived with a premise that genuinely changed the category. An entire pint for roughly 280 to 360 calories, printed in large impossible-to-miss type directly on the front of every container. Millions of people bought into the idea that they could eat a full pint in a single sitting without consequence, and the brand built an enormous business on exactly that belief. Here is how that number was achieved, and why the method matters more than the number itself. The primary mechanism was erythritol, a sugar alcohol that delivers sweetness with minimal caloric contribution. In moderate amounts, erythritol causes bloating, cramping, and significant digestive discomfort in a meaningful percentage of consumers. But the deeper problem is structural. When you market a product as low-calorie and guilt-free, and specifically position it around the idea of eating the entire container, you are actively engineering a consumption behavior. You are not selling a serving, you are selling permission. And recent research has directly linked high erythritol consumption to elevated risk of blood clots, heart attacks, and stroke. Halo Top's entire business model was built to drive consumption toward exactly the levels where those clinical associations become relevant. The second mechanism was air. A significant portion of the reduced calorie count was achieved by whipping more air into every pint than a standard product contains, meaning each container held materially less actual ice cream than the volume implied. That gap was large enough to generate a federal class action lawsuit in 2018 directly challenging how the product was being represented to consumers. The reason more recent Halo Top products carry higher calorie counts on their labels is that the original numbers required a level of transparency the brand was not initially providing. A product that constructed its health identity on a claim specifically designed to increase consumption of an ingredient linked to cardiovascular risk, while simultaneously misrepresenting product volume severely enough to attract federal litigation. That is number 2 on this list. And it gets the position because the people it targeted most aggressively were the ones most motivated to make a healthy choice. Number 1. Magnum. Magnum is engineered to feel like a reward you earned. The thick chocolate shell, the premium gold packaging. The name itself, which implies size, significance, occasion, Every element of how this product is presented communicates one message. This is not ordinary ice cream. This is something better. Now open the ingredient panel and read it completely. Mono and diglycerides, carrageenan, and in a product positioned as a luxury treat at close to $2 per individual bar, high fructose corn syrup. There is no formulation justification for high fructose corn syrup in a premium product. It is in there because it is cheaper than the alternative, not because it belongs. One Magnum bar delivers 11 grams of saturated fat. The American Heart Association recommends no more than 13 grams per day for most adults. A single bar takes you to 85% of that daily ceiling before you have finished the wrapper. Add 19 grams of added sugar and you are looking at a snack that cardiologists would flag as carrying real cardiovascular risk when consumed regularly. Elevated blood pressure, fatty liver disease, insulin resistance, weight gain compounding over time. Magnum is owned by Unilever, the same corporation behind Breyers, the same corporation behind Klondike. 3 separate brands, 3 separate premium promises, one parent company running the same cost optimization playbook across all of them simultaneously. You did everything right. You skipped the budget brands. You paid the premium price for what you believed was a premium product. The ingredient panel tells you what that premium packaging was actually built to accomplish, and it was not built for you. It was built for the margin report sitting on a desk at Unilever headquarters. Now that you know what to put back, here are the 8 brands that looked at the exact same regulatory framework and chose not to exploit it. Best option number 8. Van Leeuwen. Van Leeuwen started as a single yellow ice cream truck in Brooklyn in 2008. Today it is in over 3,000 stores across the country. Their vanilla bean contains 7 ingredients: milk, cream, cane sugar, egg yolks, vanilla extract, no gums, no corn syrup, no stabilizer network, no frozen dairy dessert fine print anywhere on the container. Consumer reviews consistently average above 4.6 stars across major retail platforms. Pints are available at Walmart for under $5. At that price point, with that ingredient list, the value proposition is genuinely difficult to argue with. 7 ingredients, real cream. No ownership by a multinational conglomerate running margin calculations that override sourcing standards. A truck in Brooklyn that became something real without becoming something unrecognizable. Best option number 7. Graeter's Ice Cream. Graeter's has been making ice cream since 1870 using the same French pot method. 2.5-gallon pots, turned by hand, the only process that produces the density and the richness that makes Graeter's taste immediately different from every industrial product sitting beside it in the freezer case. Scoop it and it resists. That resistance is not a storage artifact. It is real milk fat at the concentration it is supposed to be. It melts slowly because the structure is built on cream, not on a gum network approximating what cream should do. No artificial colors, no artificial flavors. Premium sourcing throughout, including gourmet chocolate sourced from specific producers and fruit from documented growing regions. At $12 a pint, it is among the more expensive options in this entire analysis. That experience cannot be replicated by a formula built on stabilizers, palm oil, and air. The price reflects what it actually costs to do this correctly. Best option number 6. Salt and Straw. Salt and Straw approaches ice cream the way a serious chef approaches a menu. Arbequina olive oil ice cream. Strawberry honey balsamic with black pepper. Sea salt with caramel ribbons made in-house. These are culinary creations built with real ingredients by people who treat frozen dessert as a serious food discipline, not a commodity category to be optimized for margin. Even their seasonal vegan options avoid the grainy, watery texture that plagues most non-dairy alternatives because Salt and Straw reformulates each flavor individually from its foundation, rather than applying a single base across every product. Flavors rotate monthly, pints run premium. But what you are buying is something no mass producer can replicate at scale, because the moment you scale it to the level required to compete with Klondike or Breyers, it stops being what it is. Best option number 5. Tillamook. For 114 years, Tillamook has maintained a single operating commitment: real milk, real cream, real ingredients, no reclassification as frozen dairy dessert, no slow migration toward cheaper inputs under the cover of familiar packaging. Food critics and everyday consumers consistently rank Tillamook among the best-tasting ice creams available in mainstream American retail. The reason is not complicated. Tillamook is a farmer-owned cooperative. The people making sourcing decisions are the same people producing the milk. When the board decides what goes into a carton, they are deciding what goes into a product that carries their name, their farm, their community's reputation. No carrageenan, no high-fructose corn syrup, no artificial flavors or dyes. Mix-ins are present in generous, honest amounts. At around $5.60 for 48 fluid ounces, this is one of the strongest value propositions in the entire frozen dessert category. Widely available, accessibly priced, farmer-owned, and a formula that has remained honest for over a century. Best option number 4, Strauss Family Creamery. Strauss is a family-owned, farmer-led organic operation based in Northern California, and everything that description implies about sourcing standards is verifiable when you open the carton. Every primary ingredient is certified organic. Cream, milk, cane sugar, egg yolks, vanilla extract, vanilla bean, no preservatives, no fillers, no artificial ingredients, nothing bioengineered, including in the richer, more indulgent flavors. In a 2022 Bon Appetit blind tasting of vanilla ice creams conducted across the national retail category, Strauss placed in the top 2. The texture is dense and genuinely luxurious in a way that no stabilizer-padded product can replicate, because that density comes from fat content and slow processing, not from a gum network engineered to simulate it. The organic certification here is not a marketing label applied to a product that moved through the same industrial supply chain as everything else. It is the description of an actual farm operation with an actual paper trail behind it. Best option number 3. Häagen-Dazs Classic Line. Häagen-Dazs made one decision at their founding that has sustained their position for nearly 6 decades. They refused to add complexity. Their vanilla bean contains 5 ingredients: cream, skim milk, sugar, egg yolks, vanilla extract. That is it. Even their most elaborate flavors, Rocky Road, coffee, dulce de leche, contain no gums, no artificial flavors, and no high-fructose corn syrup. Professional pastry chefs and culinary reviewers consistently rank Häagen-Dazs Vanilla Bean as the best retail vanilla ice cream available in the United States. That distinction is usually reserved for small-batch artisan producers working in quantities that make national distribution impossible. For a brand operating at this scale to still hold that ranking decades after achieving mass distribution is the direct result of one thing: refusing to use the shortcuts that every brand on the avoid list chose to exploit the moment margin pressure made those shortcuts attractive. The formula that earned the reputation is the formula still in the carton. Best option number 2, Talenti Gelato. One distinction worth understanding before you reach for this one: gelato is not ice cream. It is churned with less air, contains less fat, and is served at a slightly warmer temperature. The result is denser, more intensely flavored, and texturally richer in a way that is immediately apparent the first time you eat real gelato next to a standard American ice cream product. Talenti introduced most North Americans to what gelato actually tastes like when executed correctly. Their transparent jars are not an accident of packaging design. They let you see exactly what texture and mix-ins look like before you pay. The opposite philosophy from every brand on the avoid list, which relies on opaque packaging to prevent exactly that inspection. Real cream, milk, non-GMO sugar, egg yolks, slow cooked to develop natural flavor depth. At around $5.50 per pint, it is one of the most accessible premium frozen desserts available in mainstream grocery retail. The quality per dollar ratio here is difficult to beat. Best option number 1, Jeni's Splendid Ice Creams. When Jenny Britton Bauer founded Jeni's in Columbus, Ohio in 2002, she asked a question the rest of the industry was not asking: what would ice cream look like if a pastry chef designed it from first principles without any obligation to the existing industrial model? Instead of egg yolks as the primary emulsifier, Jenny developed a proprietary base using cream cheese and tapioca starch. The result is smooth, slightly elastic, structurally stable at any temperature, without crystallizing at low temperatures or turning gummy at slightly warmer ones. That is a genuine formulation breakthrough, not a marketing claim. Grass-raised milk from Ohio family farms, single-origin chocolates sourced from documented producers, vanilla from Madagascar, stone fruit from local Ohio orchards when in season. Jeni's Salty Caramel is consistently ranked the best caramel ice cream available anywhere in the country, by professional reviewers and by the kind of ordinary consumer who has tasted enough of the category to know what that distinction actually means. Pints run $12 to $14, reflecting what it actually costs to source real ingredients from documented farms and develop original formulations that no competitor is replicating because no competitor has figured out how. The price is real, so is everything inside the carton. The strongest everyday recommendation from this entire list is Tillamook. It is widely available, accessibly priced, farmer-owned, and operating on a formula that has remained honest for over a century. If you want the single best ice cream experience available anywhere in the country right now, Jeni's is the answer. Both of those things can be true at the same time, and neither of them requires you to choose between quality and access. Before you close this, here is the one rule worth keeping from this entire investigation. The next time you are standing in the frozen aisle, before you reach into the case, look for 2 words on the front of the container: frozen dairy dessert. They are usually printed in slightly smaller type near the flavor name, close enough to the branding to go unnoticed, far enough from it to be technically visible if you look. If you see those words, the product is operating under a different regulatory standard. Relaxed fat requirements, higher permitted moisture content, broader stabilizer allowances. The product can legally contain vegetable oil where cream should be, and a network of chemical gums where dairy fat should be doing the structural work. Then turn the container over. Scan the ingredient list for carrageenan, xanthan gum, guar gum, terra gum, locust bean gum, carob bean gum, or modified food starch. Any one of those tells you the dairy is not doing the structural work on its own. 2 or more of them stacked together tells you the gap between what the packaging implies and what the formula actually contains is significant. Tillamook is in that aisle. Van Leeuwen is at Walmart. Haagen-Dazs classics are in virtually every grocery store in the country. Real ice cream still exists. You simply have to know what you are looking at before you reach in. You have been standing in front of that freezer case your entire life. You just did not have the number 10%, and the 2 words frozen dairy dessert, that explain everything at once. Now you do. The information was always available. It was just buried under decades of packaging designed to make sure you never went looking for it. If Scam Uncovered changed how you shop today, share this with someone who is still grabbing the tub without checking. They are reaching for these brands right now, without knowing any of this. The carton looks exactly the same as it always has. The formula inside it, in too many cases on this list, does not. And the gap between those 2 things is exactly what this investigation was built to close.